There are so many of you crammed into the back of Beaird Lounge. I hope that you can all hear. Please feel free to come up and fill in on the sides. We're so happy to see you here today. So good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. We are thrilled to share this occasion with you. My name is Simpson. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I have the honor to serve as the director for the Gender and Equality Center. First things first today, I'd like to welcome Asher Stevens Tickman to offer a land acknowledgement. Asher is the president of the LGBTQ+ Student Alliance and Mr. Indian OU right now. His work as a student leader on campus has been an ongoing commitment to building a community that is affirming and inclusive of all. Please help me welcome Asher Stevens Tickman.
Before I start, I just want to thank that everyone's sitting down because I don't feel like I have to be like tippy-toeing to see everyone. Alrighty. So today I want to acknowledge that the University of Oklahoma exists on land to which Indigenous people have multiple claims, both as original caretakers and as people who are forcibly and violently removed here. The Apache, Wichita, Quapaw, and Caddo people have and continue to exist on this land, and now 39 federally recognized tribes share and live in the state of Oklahoma as sovereign peoples. Through this land acknowledgement, we are not only acknowledging Native people's contributions to the history of this state, but also the struggles and hardships that they have and continue to face in our country today. We as Native people have a 7-generation mindset where we base our actions on the effects that it will have for 7 generations after us. Through our actions today, I want us to think using this mindset as we prepare this home and resource for the LGBTQ community. I also want us to reflect and honor the voices of queer, transgender, and two-spirit Indigenous people who continue to exist in our communities. Their voices have often been silenced and neglected. However, they have served as the mentors and protectors of our people for generations. We need to ensure that as we move forward, we not just acknowledge them, but defend their honor of these individuals who have done so much and have asked for so little. Thank you guys for coming out today.
Okay. Thank you, Asher. Today is a momentous occasion, one that has been in the works for quite a long time. It's hard for me to believe that we're here. This office that was created 20 years ago to support the needs of women on campus has become a hopeful hub of justice work that centers queer and trans experiences on campus, gender-based violence prevention, sexual assault response, and advocacy. Today we celebrate a newly built space adequate to the needs of our staff and students, the creation of all-gender bathrooms that serve our community better, and the opening and rededication of a newly conceptualized LGBTQ community lounge. While I am very ready, I don't think I can tell you how ready, honestly. While I am very ready to celebrate a new space, I am perhaps more ready today to celebrate a renewed energy and appreciation for this institution, my alma mater and home for the past 20 years. Today, I celebrate that the Student Government Association, following the lead of student activists for years, demanded and then funded all gender bathrooms in iconic buildings like the Oklahoma Memorial Union. We can clap for that. Today, I celebrate that ideas like gender-based violence prevention and sexual assault response have been resourced and housed at a level that displays not only our team's commitment, but the university's as well. Yeah. I'm into this rhythm we're building, friends. Today, I celebrate that LGBTQ+ students will find community in a space that was not only created with them in mind, but then also attached to an actual support resource and network to welcome them home to OU. Today, I celebrate those in community with us here today that have labored for a really long time to make this a reality. I want to thank a group of some specific people here. The staff of the Gender and Equality Center, both present and past, who work tirelessly to create and hold space for students every day in ways that most of our campus community may not ever see up close. The OU advocates, if you're an advocate, could you wave? Ooh, yes. The OU advocates who volunteer. They volunteer to show up for OU community members in their worst moments and whose care provides much needed support to our community in need. Step and speak out, peer educators. Where are our peer educators? Oh, hi. They bravely stand in front of their peers to remind them that our community should be safe and free from sexual violence, point blank. The LGBTQ Program Advisory Board. Where are you all? Hello. Look at that overlap. They sign up to host events that celebrate our brilliant community, mourn our collective loss and pain, and envision a shared future. All LGBTQ registered student organizations who are here, they create space for queer and trans students in their respective homes across campus. I want to thank and acknowledge a student government association that made the GEC a central part of its agenda, advocated for resources, and then actually funded the renovation we're celebrating today. Their money went where their mouth, their minds, and their dreams did. Yes, we can clap for them too. A few specific people, I want to thank Bryn Daves, whose behind-the-scenes efforts to secure appropriate space for all of student affairs is actually a series of minor miracles. Thank you. I want to thank Kristen Partridge, whose steady hand and leadership for the past 15 years of the Gender and Equality Center has resulted in this thriving program, and whose personal mentorship and friendship I can't thank her for enough. I want to thank Dr. David Surratt for arriving on campus in turbulent times, almost exactly a year ago, and immediately centering attention on gender-based violence prevention and sexual assault advocacy, providing immediate and generous leadership and resources. Finally, today, I celebrate a space that is what students on our campus deserve. I had the opportunity to talk to Kathy Fall, my predecessor in this role and honestly beloved institution, right? And she has been a longtime friend and mentor for me, and I asked her what she would say if she had the opportunity to speak today. And she just kept saying, this is what the students deserve. I want to thank you all for being here with us today to dedicate a space that students have advocated for, they've demanded, and that they deserve. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the interim president of the University of Oklahoma, Joseph Harris Jr. He has served at the university for nearly 25 years in a variety of roles, including as vice president for executive affairs, general counsel, and dean of the College of Law. In May 2019, the OU Board of Regents named him interim president. Please join me in welcoming OU interim president Joseph Harris Jr.
I have all these remarks, and it's not raining or cold in here, so you're going to have to hear them. No, honestly, there were some really wonderful words that were crafted, but as you're recognizing those individuals, many of whom are populated on these first few rows, but all throughout the group, it's humbling. I mean, it really is. It is easy to speak the words whenever you're behind a microphone. This part is easy. The difficult part is standing up and advocating, being available to sexual assault victims in their worst moments. When I think about sexual assault, and we know that at least 3 out of 4 victims of sexual assault never report. So for every one that we see, and hopefully our culture is such now that more than that, hopefully it's a better number than 3 out of 4. Hopefully all report. But there's so much stigma attached. There is so much unfair guilt laid on the individual who's a victim of sexual assault that to take your time to be there for them is stunning, and it speaks volumes to the character of the individuals. It truly does. And then we think about the struggles that have taken place across human history, for the Lgbtq plus community. This idea of having to find shame or hide your sexuality that's occurred historically is fundamentally wrong. And to have individuals that have gone through and train others and stand as allies and stand up for the rights of others individuals, right? Not just civil rights, but human rights. That was part of the thought earlier this week when we began this week, talking about Dr. Martin Luther King. Right? His work around the African American experience and equality of rights, right? If you follow especially his last few years, it wasn't focused exclusively on the issue. It was focused on not just civil rights, but human rights. Right? Not just the African American experience and all of the exclusion that has taken place, but for all marginalized groups. And to me, I think it's a nice bookend to the ceremonies that we've had this week, to begin with that, and then to be at this ceremony on this Thursday afternoon. Right? These issues are a matter of fundamental importance. They capture who we are. They're also efforts by others to define us in ways that make us feel less. Less even when someone's a victim, when a woman's a victim, right? Less because of our sexuality. So as we sit here today, this is an important, we talk about what does it mean to be a place of belonging, right? What does it mean for OU to be a place where when you come here, that you not only learn academically, but you grow in your social and emotional self, right? When you learn not just what you think, but what people who are not like you think, right? When you learn how to impact the world, that's the whole dream we have. And it should be our promise to our students that when you come here, this is a place where you will learn intellectually, where you'll grow emotionally, and where you'll come to understand people not like yourself. And along the way, you may actually do something really remarkable, and that is find meaning in your life and find purpose in your life. And for every large donor I've been around, and I find my way around a lot of them, just by happenstance. But for every individual that is an alumnus or friend of this university that has the capacity to give back in some way, for every single one of them, whether it's financial riches, right, or some level of fame that they have, people that certainly I as a student at OU would have looked at and thought, one day I want to be like them. Every single one of them, when you ask them why they're involved with the university and what is it that's given them the most fulfillment in life, it's always, in every single instance, about helping other people. It's always that. It's never how much money they have, never how famous they are. It's what they've done to help other people. And it's why, as Aaron was making the introductions and recognizing individuals, I couldn't sort of help but awkwardly turn to the side and look with admiration. Because I wasn't that person in undergrad. And to see in the actions of our students and our staff and our faculty and our community the ability to reach out and to be involved in someone else's life is the essence of what our hope and dream is for our students that come through here. They become our graduates. One of my favorite lines, as a dean of a law school, you have a lot of time to talk with students. And a lot of them are asking that big question, right? What is the meaning of life? And, the one that I always came back to is pretty simple, which is love. And if you can, make a difference. When we look across this room, I've seen a lot of you all at events this week. And you all are doing both of those things. And for me, it is with unbelievable pride that I say I'm a member of this community. I think it's from there that we're making big advances. And it is, I started off on Tuesday talking about historical context, and I think it matters a great deal. And I won't cover all of it, although I am tempted. But it is, I spoke about the timeline where civil rights were actually given to African American members of the communities of the United States, and that timeline, right? And I talked there about how it was 100 years, more than 100 years from the time of the passage of the 13th Amendment ending slavery until the actual civil rights that were promised were at least enshrined in statute in 1964. And that was after we had the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the passage 2 years later of the 14th Amendment, right, granting equality. But when you look at, and the most obvious one is Lgbtq issues, for which the struggle is still ongoing in so many ways, and so clearly at all levels of government. But looking at gender itself, right, this idea of a gender and equality office, when you look at gender, right, it is chronicled by many to have been, right, originally, if you look at the Civil Rights Act of 1866, it talks about granting rights equal to white men. Right, that's the language of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And there are cases that talk about that, because that got enshrined into a civil rights piece of legislation called Section 1981. And there was a case where a woman sued and said, this statute granting civil rights should apply to me as a female for being discriminated against because of my gender. And the Supreme Court said, oh, no, no. That was never contemplated, that law would give rights on the same basis as white men to women. Maybe black men, but not women. And really, it was not until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, initially, as many of you know, in 1964, initially, women, right, embodied in sex, right, sex-based discrimination, weren't supposed to be a part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 because everyone thought it wouldn't pass. And there's a representative who added it, Howard Smith from Virginia, that added it. Many think, and this is a point of interesting discussion, but many contend that it was done in an effort to what they call hug a piece of legislation to death. Right? If you put in women, then it certainly wouldn't pass. And then as you go through and look at it, the very first time that women in the workplace, right, were given the right to make a hostile, sexually hostile environment claim was not until 1987. Meritor versus Vinson. Until then, you all have seen Mad Men, I'm sure. Right? In the workplace, unless you said to a female, typically, but not always, in that case, unless you conditioned promotion or a job specifically on the basis, right, either, have sex with me or you lose your job, if you didn't say that, everything else was fair game until 1987. Right? And here today, as I said before, we know that 3 out of 4 cases of sexual assault go unreported. Now, when we talk about Selma and Birmingham, we know there's also Seneca Falls and the Stonewall Inn. Right? I need not stand up here and speak to this group about discrimination that takes place against Lgbtq plus communities and individuals. And in our own state, right? Police raids at Angles Bar, Craig v. Boren, creating a separate standard for gender-based, for equal protection for women. As you go through it, there's a lot to realize in terms of historical context. What you all are doing is fulfilling the promise that was made so long ago through the actions that you're engaging in. I had a great moment just in the last year. A member of my immediate family came out as gay. And it was one of those conversations where I was like, I'm going to be the advocate. And I was very proud of myself, my very enlightened self. And so I had the conversations with the older people in the family on behalf of my nephew. And I was so proud of myself. Thought about giving myself like an award, some sort of prize. And then I turned to my kids, who are 16, 13, and 10, and I thought, you know what? Since he's announced the rule, I'm going to tell them because I'm just this great of an advocate. And I turned to them and I said the words to them. I said, did you know? And I want you to know. And literally the response to me was, so? And then the next kid asked, why'd you bring it up? And I was like, shut up. That's how I handled it. It's a good parenting technique, I think I made it clear. Everyone here understands and hopefully knows the importance of the role of the Gender Inequality Center. Aaron's talked about the history of it. And part of that, is that 5 years ago, a group of student activists called Queer Inclusion on Campus lobbied the university for more support and more resources. And as a result of that, the LGBT Community Lounge was created, and eventually what was the Women's Outreach Center became the Gender Inequality Office. And I think we congratulated, thanked everyone here except for Aaron. We appreciate Aaron's leadership of that. So Aaron, thank you very much. All right, I am going to summarize and end this, I promise you, at some point, but I may not. I don't know. There's a quote. Today we are closer to realizing the original goals of the group, and the words of Lena Tenney, who many of you all know, a two-time OU alum and one of those original activists, shared a reflection today, on today's occasion. They couldn't be here, but which they kindly agreed for me to read. And here's the quote. For decades, generations of LGBTQ students, faculty, and staff at OU have worked to provide community support to one another through informal networks, ad hoc committees, and activist groups. For the university to build upon this loving legacy of individual champions by making an institutional commitment to support coordinated services and community space is truly incredible. As the work of equity continues, we must always remember the times when what we now have, was once hardly dared to be imagined. Lena is in Ohio and could not be here today, but we thank them for their advocacy and for sharing their perspective. We are so proud of what we have here today. This matters fundamentally to us as an institution. How we treat each other matters. How we support each other matters. That is at the absolute root of what it means to be a true, loving, and inclusive community. And I'm thankful to all of you who make that a reality. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words and your continued commitment to the Gender Inequality Center. I now have the honor of introducing one of the GEC's many outstanding students. Leanne Howe, an English literature and social justice major, has worked with the GEC in just about every way that a student possibly can be involved. They are currently the chair of the LGBTQ Program Advisory Board and a student supervisor for Step In, Speak Out. They have also served as a peer educator, the Gender-Based Violence Prevention Program intern, several years as a member of the Program Advisory Board, worked on the Mosaic Social Justice Symposium, pretty much all of it. Leanne was also recently named OU's 30th Rhodes Scholar, and literally no one in our office was surprised. Please help me welcome Leanne Howe.
Hello. I'm going to move this down. Thank you to Aaron for the introduction. I'm honored to speak today as a member of the Gender Inequality Center. Like Aaron said, over the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of serving in every student leadership role available, including some that no longer exist. Rest in peace, Mosaic Social Justice Symposium. We had a good run. I saw my first Step In, Speak Out training in the Couch Tower lobby, never imagining that the campus sexual assault statistics would come to describe my own friend group. This was before the training became mandatory for all first-year students, over 4,000 people each year. When I first joined the LGBTQ Program Advisory Board, it consisted of a dozen queer kids scraping together the resources to educate our cisgender and heterosexual peers. Now we develop student leaders, attend national conferences, and host the biggest drag show in the state of Oklahoma. Yes, we can clap for that. Yeah. I've worked with 2 directors, 3 LGBTQ plus program coordinators, and an entire sitcom ensemble's worth of GEC interns. But before all of this, I'm a student, and that's the perspective I want to draw attention to today. I came to OU from California without a single Oklahoma connection. I'd spent high school in the closet, dodging the homonegativity, trans negativity, and misogyny of my family and my father, an evangelical preacher. Because I was queer and non-binary, I was scared there was something wrong with me or that I was condemned to live in loneliness. When I joined the LGBTQ plus program advisory board as a first-year student, I just wanted to be accepted. But it was so much more than that. For the first time in my life, I met people who saw their identities as a cause for celebration instead of shame. Through the Gender Inequality Center, I found my friends, my fellow activists, and my chosen family. The people in this room helped me move apartments after a cancer diagnosis and surgery. accompanied me onto the field during homecoming as part of the first ever gender-neutral homecoming court. Yeah. And they reminded me every day that I was loved for who I was and that I belonged here at this institution as much as anyone else. That's why this dedication means so much to me, and it's why I'm so glad to see the Gender and Equality Center and the LGBTQ+ Community Lounge occupying such a central location in the heart of campus, where future generations of activists and advocates can gather to push social justice forward. Because it needs to be pushed. Victims and survivors of gender-based violence and LGBTQ+ people continue to be marginalized on our campus, in our communities, and across our country. When our President of the United States faces no consequences for credible accusations of sexual assault, when our Supreme Court debates whether people deserve to be fired from their jobs for being gay, when transgender people, particularly trans women of color, lose not just their livelihoods, but their lives to anti-trans violence, when the Oklahoma State Legislature denies the importance of consent education in public schools, when our very own university still does not offer gender-inclusive housing, the work is far from over. We just have a new office to do it in, and I personally can't wait to get started.
Thank you. Before I ask Justin to come up and lead us singing the OU chant, I think it's an appropriate time to remind us of the parable of the choir. A choir, or really any group singing together, can sustain something beautiful for an impossibly long length of time. Because each individual singer has the opportunity to take a breath while the strength of the choir holds the note. The strength of the choir holds the note. I think that's a beautiful metaphor for equity work. Working for a more affirming and inclusive campus is like joining in singing the OU chant and hoping that we can make real the promise of Live On University for those who have been excluded from it for so long. I hope for those of you gathered here today that the Gender and Equality Center can help you hold the note. Justin? I'd like to invite Justin Norris, the Student Government Association President and Step In Speak Out peer educator, because we're literally everywhere, to lead us in singing the OU chant.
O-K-L-A-H-O-M-A. Our chant rolls on and on. Thousand strong join heart and song in alma mater's praise. Of campus beautiful by day and night, our colors proudly gleaming red and white, 'neath the western sky, OU's chant will never die. Live on, university.
Okay, a little housekeeping note. We're basically going to flip, and the ribbon is in front of the actual Gender and Equality Center. I want to remind all students affiliated with the GEC or an LGBTQ registered student organization are invited to participate in this momentous moment. So please join me in the back behind the ribbon.